Welcome to Last Records. Who doesn't love a good food challenge? Today we're serving up a collection of food challenges with endings so disturbing that you might not make it through the whole course. From a bizarre blended animal recipe to something as simple as a rice ball that sent an entire campus into panic, all caught on camera. It was the night of October 9th, 2022, in Tulsa, Oklahoma. A bright ring light filled a small garage while thousands of people watched a live stream from their phones and computers. Marlo Densby was 28 years old and had finished college with a business degree, but he believed streaming was his path to success and didn't want to get a regular job. For nearly 2 years, he uploaded videos with little to show for it, sometimes attracting only a handful of viewers. Then, one food challenge changed everything. A video of him racing to finish a massive meal before a timer expired became his most popular upload. Viewers wanted bigger meals, and every challenge brought more views, more shares, and more donations. Before long, eating challenges became the only content his audience wanted. I have watched creators get locked into one thing by their audience, and I always wonder at what point it stops being something they chose and starts being something they are trapped in. As his audience grew, giant meals stopped getting attention. Viewers wanted something more extreme. They dared him to eat foods that are foul-smelling, then animal parts most people would never consider. Every time he accepted, his views climbed higher. Soon, people weren't watching to see how much he could eat, they were watching to see how far he was willing to go. One evening, someone in the chat promised $5,000, the biggest donation he had ever seen, if he would blend and drink a mixture of animal organs live on stream. Hundreds of viewers urged him to accept, while others mocked him, saying he would back out. Wanting the money and the attention, Marlo announced he would do it the following night. When the stream began, thousands of people were already watching. Earlier that day, Marlo had stopped by a local butcher to buy the organs and spent time cleaning the ones that needed it before setting everything out on the table. Marlo placed a clear blender on the table so everyone could see what he was putting inside. One by one, he held each item up to the camera before dropping it in. It contained a cow eye, a goat brain, cow tongue cut into chunks, beef liver, chicken intestines, strips of tripe. After adding a little broth, he snapped the lid on and blended everything into a thick, grayish-brown drink. Even before pouring the first glass, he gagged at the smell. The chat filled with messages urging him to finish the whole blender and reminding him about the promised $5,000. I'm honestly gagged learning this. There are really people in this world who find joy in pushing others to do things that they clearly don't want to do, or things that are just plain bizarre. Those are exactly the kind of people and audience that I personally would want to avoid. By the time he was most of the way through the blender, his body had already started rejecting everything. He coughed repeatedly and struggled to keep the liquid down. He leaned forward in his chair, and moments later he vomited suddenly without warning. At the same instant, he gasped for air and inhaled the vomit into his airway. His body went limp. He slipped from his chair and collapsed onto the floor while the cameras kept recording. Many viewers assumed it was a stunt. The live stream continued running, and nobody intervened for several minutes. His younger brother eventually walked in to check on him and found him collapsed on the floor. I seriously wonder what that walk from the door to the chair must have looked like. He called emergency services immediately. Paramedics arrived and transported Marlo to a nearby hospital, where he was pronounced dead later that night. The live stream continued for several more minutes before a moderator finally ended the broadcast. The medical examiner recorded his cause of death as acute airway obstruction caused by aspiration of gastric contents. Only after investigators reviewed the stream did they discover the truth. The promised $5,000 had never been real. The account making the offer was part of a network of bot accounts created to flood his chat with fake encouragement and false promises of payment. The money Marlo believed he was risking everything for had never existed. That is the part I keep coming back to. He pushed himself to death chasing money that was never there. Someone sat behind a screen, manufactured that moment on purpose, and watched it unfold. The first case really terrifies me. Now this next one has nothing to do with screens. She just walked into a supermarket full of insects. It was the afternoon of March 22nd, 2019, inside a supermarket in Queens, New York. People were shopping, workers were restocking shelves, and a small crowd had gathered around a demonstration area where a specialty edible insect company was hosting a promotional eating challenge. Priya Lindquist was 35 years old and worked as a veterinary nurse at a busy animal hospital. She loved her job and had no money problems, but she could never resist a free prize. Her friends joked that if they heard the words free contest, Priya would already be signing up. A few years earlier, she had broken her wrist while rushing through a shopping mall obstacle course to win a television. Her friends hoped she had learned her lesson, but she kept entering contests anyway. I know people like Priya, the ones who see a contest sign and start walking toward it before they've even read what it is. There's something genuinely fun about that personality, right up until it isn't. On the afternoon of March 22nd, Priya finished work and went to a nearby supermarket with a colleague to buy groceries. As they walked in, they heard an announcement over the loudspeaker. A specialty edible insect company was filming a promotional event for its social media pages. Volunteers could compete under challenge rules that allowed contestants to choose to eat live Madagascar, hissing cockroaches, and large edible giant grubs that had been raised in the farm for human consumption. The company normally sold the insects prepared for eating, but the live option was included only as part of the contest for volunteers who agreed to it. The winner would receive a gift basket of groceries and shopping vouchers. Priya had not planned to enter anything that day, but the moment she heard there were prizes, she walked over and signed her name. Her colleague urged her to skip the contest and continue shopping, but Priya ignored the warning and signed up anyway.
I get it. I mean, who doesn't love free stuff? But the truth is, it isn't really free. You pay for it. Not with money, but with your body.
Several shoppers gathered around the table as the contest started. The moment Priya bit into the first insect, she struggled with the texture and taste. The movement of the live insects and the sensation of chewing them made her stomach turn almost immediately. Instead of stopping, she hurried to swallow them faster because she wanted to finish before the nausea became unbearable. After several insects, she became visibly pale. Her body was fighting the nausea and gagging at the same time. She reached out toward the edge of the promotional table to steady herself, but her legs gave way before she could grip it properly. As she stumbled backward, she still had partially chewed insects in her mouth. She fell hard, and the back of her head struck the sharp corner of a metal storage rack positioned several feet behind the contest area as part of the store's normal shelving layout. The impact was immediate and severe. She collapsed onto the floor, and several partially chewed insects spilled from her mouth as she lay motionless. The contest stopped instantly. Store employees rushed to her while someone called emergency services and others cleared the area. Paramedics arrived within minutes and began treating her before transporting her to a nearby hospital. Priya Lindquist was pronounced dead a short time after arriving.
I just can't imagine seeing my friend lying on the floor with insects still in her mouth. That's honestly something I don't think I could ever handle.
The medical examiner recorded her cause of death as fatal blunt force head trauma caused by the fall, with the fall believed to have been precipitated by severe nausea or loss of balance during the eating challenge. Investigators reviewed the camera footage and the contest setup, determining that the promotional area met the planned layout and that the storage rack was part of the store's normal fixtures. They found no fault with the contest setup or the store. The death was ruled accidental. The next person spent months preparing, sourced everything carefully, cooked every step herself, and it still ended the same way. It was the afternoon of August 23, 2017, inside a television studio in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Bright lights filled the stage, cameras were rolling, and a live audience waited for the food challenge to begin. Odalis Renfrew was 32 years old and worked as a private chef in a coastal town in Louisiana. She had spent years cooking for weddings, birthday parties, and local events. People loved her food, but the work was never steady. Some months she had more bookings than she could handle, and other months she barely had enough. 2 months earlier, she had married her husband, and the two of them had started talking about buying a house and building a family. Odalis wanted something more stable, a job with a regular income and more time at home instead of spending most weekends traveling between events. There's something you should note here. They were still in the part of a marriage where you are making plans and talking about everything you want to build. I find that detail impossible to read past quickly. When a popular television food challenge show announced a special anniversary episode and invited contestants from across Louisiana to compete for a cash prize and a chance to become the show's new host,
Odalis believed it was exactly the opportunity that she had been waiting for.
The rules were simple. Each contestant had to finish a large seafood dish within 5 minutes while cameras recorded the challenge. The person who finished the fastest would move on to the final round. Odalis chose what she believed was a rare edible reef crab purchased through a specialty seafood importer for the challenge. The supplier had assured her it was safe to eat, and the shipment had arrived labeled as an edible variety. She cleaned it carefully, seasoned it with her own recipe, cooked it thoroughly, and placed the finished dish in front of the cameras and audience when her turn came. When the countdown started, Odalis began eating quickly as the audience cheered.
She swallowed the last bite just before the 5-minute mark, completing the challenge as cameras captured the moment.
This is the part that unsettles me. She did everything right. The failure was never hers. That is what makes this one sit differently from the others. About 20 to 30 minutes later, while another contestant was preparing for their turn, Odalis quietly told a production crew member that her lips and tongue felt numb. She assumed it was tiredness from eating so fast. Then her speech started to slur. The words came out wrong, and she struggled to speak clearly. Weakness moved through her arms and legs, and she could not keep herself upright. She tried to speak again and could barely get the sounds out. Her breathing became shallow and labored. Unable to hold herself up anymore, she fell down unconscious. The broadcast was stopped immediately as on-site paramedics and medical staff rushed to Odalis. She was taken by ambulance to a nearby hospital, where doctors quickly recognized the signs of severe neurotoxin poisoning and began emergency treatment, including respiratory support. But the toxins had already paralyzed the muscles she needed to breathe, and she died later that day. The medical examiner ruled her death a result of respiratory failure caused by neurotoxin poisoning after consuming a toxic xanthid crab that had been mislabeled as an edible reef crab. Investigators traced the error to the seafood shipment, prompting health authorities to recall the remaining stock.
In the weeks that followed, Odalis' husband filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the supplier, alleging negligence over the mislabeled shipment.
As legal pressure and public scrutiny mounted, the company permanently ceased operations, while food safety authorities introduced stricter verification procedures for specialty seafood used in future televised food challenges. Odalis made no mistakes. A mislabeled box is what killed her. The next person knew exactly what he was eating and chose it anyway. It was the afternoon of October 20th, 2018, at a seafood market in Los Angeles, California. Customers walked from stall to stall while cameras recorded the final day of a food challenge watched by thousands of people online. Beau Chastain was 31 years old and made videos about unusual food from around the world. Before becoming a full-time creator, he worked in his uncle's small grocery store. The pay was enough to live on, but he wanted something different. He started posting food videos after work, and little by little, people began watching. A media company later invited him to join its yearly 20-day Extreme Foods Challenge, where selected creators spent 20 days trying unusual dishes from different countries and submitted their videos for judging at the end. For 4 years in a row, Beau finished every challenge and became one of the company's featured creators. It brought him more followers, better sponsorships, and enough money to keep making videos full-time. Then, the year before, everything changed. On the 19th day of the challenge, he failed to finish a serving of fail curry, one of the hottest curries in the world. Because he did not complete all 20 days, his winning streak ended. A food creator from China completed every challenge that year and was chosen as the featured creator instead. Beau quietly promised himself he would win again.
I understand that feeling more than I'd like to admit.
When something you built gets taken and you spend the whole next year quietly planning how to get it back, that drive is not a bad thing. It just depends entirely on where it takes you. Over the following year, he planned carefully. He wanted his final video to be something nobody would expect. As the 20th day approached, he learned the Chinese creator planned to end his own series by eating a scorpion dish at a famous restaurant in China. Beau felt he needed something even more striking. After going through different ideas, he settled on a Sanakji-style dish, featuring live octopus from a seafood market in Los Angeles. His cousin agreed to film the final episode before they submitted the completed series for judging. The cameras started rolling. Beau picked up the first piece of moving octopus with his chopsticks, smiled at the camera, and placed it in his mouth. Before he finished chewing, the moving tentacles reached the back of his throat. The suction cups latched onto the soft tissue and held firm. Beau immediately started coughing and gagging. He pressed his hands to his throat and tried to pull air in, but nothing was getting through. His face changed completely. He grabbed at his neck and bent forward, trying to force the blockage free, but his body could not dislodge it. The octopus was still moving inside his throat, and every small movement of the tentacles tightened the grip on his airway. His cousin dropped the camera and ran to him. Market workers called emergency services immediately. One employee attempted abdominal thrusts several times, trying to force the obstruction free, but the piece remained firmly lodged in his airway despite their efforts. Beau lost consciousness before paramedics arrived. Paramedics reached the scene within minutes and continued emergency treatment before rushing him to a nearby hospital. Despite their efforts, Beau Chastain died from asphyxiation caused by a complete airway obstruction. He spent a whole year planning that final video. Every detail thought through. He came back to win it one last time, and his cousin had to watch the whole thing happen. The medical examiner recorded his cause of death as asphyxiation resulting from airway obstruction caused by live octopus tentacle suction adhesion to the pharyngeal tissue during consumption. Police spoke with Bo's cousin and market workers to piece together what had happened. After learning of his death, the media company announced it would postpone that year's competition rather than choose a winner. The annual Extreme Foods Challenge was quietly discontinued. It had run for several years. Bo had come back to win it one final time.
The last story ended with one of the world's strangest meals.
This next one starts with something almost everyone has had. It was August 16th, 2017, and people filled a county fair outside Wichita, Kansas. Emery Vasilenko was 29 years old and worked as a delivery driver for a local beverage company. A few months earlier, he had started dating a woman named Hannah. It was their first time visiting the county fair together. Emery wanted to impress her by showing he was confident and always ready for something exciting. Hannah was more careful and preferred to stay away from risky games. As they walked around the fair, they eventually came to a stage where a soda chugging contest was about to begin. That challenge sounded easy, until we realized it wasn't. The contest mechanics were straightforward. 2 contestants would race to drink 3 liters of carbonated cola. The first to finish would win a cash prize and a trophy. Hannah looked at the large bottles on the table and quietly tried to discourage Emery from joining, worried that drinking that much soda so quickly was dangerous. But Emery brushed off her concerns, handed her his phone to record the contest, and confidently walked onto the stage. The contest began as the crowd counted down. Both contestants lifted their bottles and started drinking as fast as they could. Emery noticed his rival stopping every now and then to burp before taking another drink. Afraid those short pauses would let the other man catch up if he slowed down too, Emery kept swallowing without stopping. Along with the soda, he swallowed large amounts of air and carbon dioxide gas. His stomach began filling with the liquid and the trapped gas. By the time he finished the second liter, his stomach had become much larger than normal. It looked visibly swollen. Even though it hurt, he refused to stop because he could see he was still ahead. Hannah kept recording from the crowd, hoping the contest would end soon.
That's the part I genuinely struggle to understand.
When your own body is telling you something is wrong, you should stop and listen. But Emery did the exact opposite. He forced himself to finish the last bottle. The crowd cheered as he swallowed the final mouthful. He slammed the empty bottle onto the table, threw both hands into the air, and smiled proudly. The celebration was caught on camera by Hannah and many other people standing around the stage. Within minutes of finishing the competition, Emery suddenly doubled over in pain. Clutching his abdomen, he fell to his knees before collapsing onto the ground. Event staff rushed over while someone called emergency services. Hannah dropped the phone and ran straight to his side. She had tried to stop him before he ever stepped onto the stage, and when everything fell apart, she never hesitated. That detail is impossible for me to get past. Paramedics arrived quickly and rushed Emery to a nearby hospital. Doctors performed emergency surgery, but despite their efforts, his injuries were too severe. He died later that evening. An autopsy later revealed what had happened. Rapidly consuming such a large amount of carbonated soda without allowing the trapped gas to escape had caused acute gastric distension, leading to a gastric rupture and severe internal injuries. The medical examiner ruled his death the result of complications from the rupture. Videos recorded by Hannah were handed over to investigators,
and the county fair permanently canceled its soda chugging contest.
Emery had a crowd, a prize, and someone watching. The last person had none of that. 5 friends at lunch, no stakes, no audience. Just a joke that nobody meant to take seriously. It was April 9th, 2022, and students filled the university cafeteria in Osaka, Japan. Lunch had just started. People were eating, talking, and laughing while several students recorded short videos to share with their friends. Kenta Ashiwara was 21 years old and studied business at a university in Osaka. He lived with his older sister after their parents died a few years earlier. His sister worked long hours to help pay for his education, and Kenta often told her he would graduate, find a good job, and make life easier for both of them.
I think about what it means to have someone sacrifice that much for you and carry that quietly every single day.
Kenta knew what his sister was giving up. He was friendly, liked making people laugh, and was always the first person to turn an ordinary day into a joke. His friends said he could make a game out of almost anything. That afternoon, Kenta and 4 friends were eating lunch together when one of them joked about who could finish 5 large rice balls the fastest. Everyone laughed. There were no prizes, no sponsors, and no official rules. It was just a silly challenge to see who would finish first. One friend placed a phone on the table to record the challenge so they could watch it later and laugh about it in their group chat. The challenge started, and everyone began eating as fast as they could. Some stopped to chew before taking another bite, while others laughed because their mouths were already too full to talk. Kenta noticed one of his friends was almost finished with the 3rd rice ball. Not wanting to lose, he stopped chewing properly and began swallowing much bigger bites. No prize, no audience, no money on the line, just 5 friends at lunch, and nobody wanting to be the one who lost. I have been at tables like that. Most of us have. That is what makes this one feel so relatable. When he reached the 4th rice ball, he pushed almost the whole thing into his mouth and tried to swallow it without chewing enough. The thick rice ball became stuck in his throat and completely blocked his airway. Kenta suddenly stopped moving. He grabbed his throat and tried to cough, but no sound came out. His face quickly turned red as he struggled to breathe. At first, one of his friends thought he was joking because the challenge had started as a laugh. A few seconds later, they realized something was terribly wrong. Panic spread across the table. One friend pounded Kenta's back, while another tried to force him to drink water, hoping it would wash the rice ball down. Precious seconds passed before someone finally called emergency services. Following the dispatcher's instructions, they began proper first aid for choking, but by then Kenta had already lost consciousness and stopped breathing normally. His friends started CPR while waiting for paramedics to arrive. This is exactly why learning basic choking first aid matters. Panic makes people act on instinct, and instinct isn't always the right response. Those first few seconds can be the difference between life and death. Paramedics reached the cafeteria, removed the rice ball from his airway, and managed to restart his heart. He was rushed to the hospital, but he had gone too long without enough oxygen reaching his brain. Kenta remained unconscious for 4 days and never regained consciousness. He later died from complications caused by severe oxygen deprivation to the brain. The entire challenge was caught on camera by the phone left recording on the table. Investigators later determined that the delay caused by the friends' initial attempts to help had cost valuable time before effective choking first aid began. The video was briefly shared in the friends' private group chat before everyone agreed to delete it after Kenta's death. It was never posted publicly. What started as a simple joke between friends ended in tragedy
because of one rushed decision and a few critical seconds lost to panic.